Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Meet the Faculty, MFA Screen Scoring and Music Design. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. You may ask a question at any time by using the Q&A box on your screen. Please note this webinar is being recorded, and it's now my pleasure to turn the session over to Shirin Sagafi. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Bailey. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our MFA in Screen Scoring and Music Design webinar. My name is Shireen Sagafi, and I will be your moderator for today's session. During today's webinar, you will have the opportunity to meet our Executive Dean, Dr. Andy Hill, and some of your faculty. They will provide insights into the curriculum, student experience, and answer your questions during the Q&A portion of the presentation. With that, it is my pleasure to turn the presentation over to our Executive Dean, Dr. Andy Hill. Andy, the floor is yours.
Our return visitors, welcome back. And for those who are new, welcome to this, our second webinar. For those of you who weren't here for the first one and have basic questions about the construction of the program, its location, its length, the curriculum, we're going to give you an opportunity to ask those questions in the Q&A section. But I want to focus on something else first. When I was asked a little over a year ago to direct this program for MDS at Strayer, I was given one set of directions, and that was build us the finest screen scoring program in the world. Well, that's a tall order, but I said, I will humbly accept if you give me the resources to do so. And last time we talked a little bit about the material resources, the facility in Atlanta, Midtown Atlanta, the classroom that was being built for us from the ground up to our specifications, and about the makeup of the construction of the curriculum itself. Today, I want to focus on our human resources, our faculty, because regardless of how strong your curriculum is, regardless of how state-of-the-art your equipment is, no program functions without a top-notch faculty. That's what makes or breaks these programs. And I feel like those of you who are making a decision to come into the program truly have the A-team working with you. Why do I feel that way? First of all, none of the folks you're going to meet today come to us from academia, although all have teaching experience. There's no one coming straight from one classroom to another. These are all working professionals. They've all built their own companies. In the case of Demetrius, Versus Audio. In the case of Phillip Simmons, PAS, Phillip Arthur Simmons, Music. And in the case of Seth Wright, Wright Music Interactive. And that was important to me because many of you, I hope, will go out to do the same. Either you'll do it on your own as sole proprietors, or you'll do it in a collective or in concert with other composers, maybe even some of the people you go to school with. I truly think that that's going to be the way to survive the changing landscape of this business, the radically different business models, and the radically different producer identities. Now, it used to be that we talked about Hollywood. Now Silicon Valley has come to Hollywood, and we've got Amazon and Netflix and Apple producing as much or more content than any of the Hollywood majors. And along with that, there have been all sorts of sea changes in the way deals are done with composers, in the way contracts are made. And we'll talk about some of those things as we go through this. But it was really important to me to have people on board who had that experience. Now, not only have they built their own companies, these are all composers. So they all have had experience doing what those of you who are here today want to do, ultimately. They've all had extensive experience in the recording studio. And as you know, one of the key elements in this program is the fact that, you have three basically capstone experiences culminating with one big one at the end, all three of which basically put you in a recording studio with live musicians. And we're really excited to be able to do that for you. And as I talk to the individual teachers, you'll get a little bit more of a sense of where their experience lies in this regard. And they're also all seasoned people. There are programs out there where basically you're going to be taught by people who recently graduated the programs themselves. And I don't think that's fair to students. I think you need teachers who basically bring their studio experience, their compositional experience, their business experience directly from the real world to you. So all in all, I feel like we've got an extraordinary team. And I'm going to give each of them a chance to talk today and for you to meet them, beginning with Phillip Arthur Simmons, who is our Associate Professor of Orchestration and Arrangement. And he'll be up on deck in that first quarter to teach arrangement and instrumentation for hybrid scores. And then he'll be back in the second semester to teach a full-blown advanced orchestration class. And Phillip and I go back a ways. We don't have to dwell on that history today, but I do want to ask you, Phillip, first of all, tell us a little bit about PAS Music.
Yeah, sure. So PAS Music was something that I started probably about 15 years ago now, as kind of a platform. At first, it was just me, kind of living the dream, scoring films and getting whatever kind of work I could. But it really expanded into kind of a full service outfit for scoring services, orchestration, music prep services. And we even kind of service a lot of the really large scoring sessions with music notation templates now for the scoring stages during sessions.
So you're approached typically by your client is generally the composer himself or herself. Is that right?
The composer, and for a lot of the really big projects, the orchestrators from those projects will approach us and ask for some bespoke templates for their needs for those specific scoring sessions. So we'll set up kind of a blank notation template that they'll go into and orchestrate the music for those recordings.
By the way, Phillip is a past master with Steinberg's Dorico notation platform, which is what you'll be using in this program. We've done that basically to create a sort of uniformity and a standard of work in what we actually present to musicians and conductors on the scoring stage. And for those of you not familiar with Dorico, who've been in either Finale or Sibelius or MuseScore in recent years, there will be a little bit of a learning curve, but hopefully not too steep of one. And with Phillip at the helm, I think that curve will be a lot easier to work with. And I want to ask you along those lines, Phillip, I know exactly why I wanted you here as part of the senior faculty and why the rest of the MDS at Strayer operation concurred with that opinion. Why don't you give us a little introduction to yourself and what makes you feel that you are uniquely qualified to lead this part of the program?
So for probably about 10 years, I've been active in the film scoring community, specifically with a lot of Georgia-produced films, short films, and festival runs on the scoring front. But I've also really gotten into the orchestration side of the industry, basically where people will come to me ahead of a scoring session, a recording session, and need someone to take their MIDI sketches and turn them into sheet music for those recordings. And that's what I love. That's my bread and butter. I love the composition process, of course. I love the scoring process, but I really, really love orchestration because I'm really passionate about clear communication to the musicians on the scoring stage. The thing is, if you're recording with musicians on a scoring stage, time is money. And if you're wasting time, you're wasting money. And so one of the biggest concerns, of course, for anybody who's spending money on a session is that they can sit down, play the music successfully, and get successful recordings from that. So I'm really passionate about clarity of communication on that front, because in the end, it saves people money. You know, we can create beautiful music, but it also helps to make the production a lot more economical along the way.
Absolutely. Clear communication with the musicians leads ultimately to clearer communication with the audience, which is what this is all about. You're all going to be communicators. And when an audience in Singapore or London or LA sees the film that you scored, they basically all have to come away with the same sense of what the music is playing, what it's highlighting, what it's underlining. And that's a tough assignment, but I think Phillip is as good a person as I know to lead you through that. And by the way, orchestration, I'm going to make the, I think, relatively safe assumption that all of you want to be composers. That's the aspiration. That's the gold at the end of the rainbow, right? But there are many paths into that. And one of the best ones is orchestration. Later on in the program, you're going to meet a gentleman by the name of Conrad Pope, who I think is the greatest living example of that. Phillip, I want to ask you to sort of wrap up. When you developed your coursework, you were asked to posit learning outcomes, learning objectives, what the students needed to know when they completed your course. And I want to see if you can sort of distill those down into one or two essential things that you want students to come away from your courses with.
It's difficult to distill it, but I'll do my best here. So, you know, I'm teaching the hybrid instrumentation and arrangement course and the advanced orchestration course. And there's a lot of overlap between those in the way that we're learning how instruments work together and how to make them work on the larger landscape of a score. I think the biggest thing that I want people who are coming at this with an orchestration mind to learn is that we're going well beyond just simple instrumentation, simple ranges of instruments. We're painting with these instruments. We're painting with colors and sculpting sound in a way that you feel. And that's the most important part, you know, hearing and feeling the music. So I think once students have completed these courses, I want them to be sculptors and painters and feel very confident with those skills as it pertains to music and instrumentation.
Yeah, I think the analogy with painting is an excellent one. And one of the composers from the canon, who's an exemplar for us as film composers, is Maurice Ravel, who probably expressed that better than anyone else when he talked about the fact that he was a colorist, that he didn't want the audience necessarily to hear an oboe or a harp or a viola. He wanted them to hear the sound of the clouds scudding across the sky or of a storm approaching. And that's the really great part of orchestration. Phillip, thank you. I'm going to move on to Demetrius Martin.
Certainly.
And Demetrius, you can unmute yourself and come on camera. And I think, Demetrius, you are at the campus facility, yes?
Yep, I'm right here at the campus.
You guys can't see much of it right now. We're gonna try and give you a peek at that later. It is ready to lift off like a rocket ship, and it is really impressive. And for any of you who are planning on attending our live event on Friday, you'll see it for yourself. But Demetrius is now in one of the 3 private mixing rooms. And this big part of our program is that we're providing you not only with a classroom space that is also a lab where you can come in and work for pretty much as long as you want to in a shared space, but also private mixing rooms where you can go in, take off the headphones, blast your mix, and make sure that it works on the speakers as well as in your headphones. And that's that's something, that's a luxury I've never been able to provide students with. So I'm very happy to have it here. Demetrius, I want you to tell us a little bit about Versus Music, your company, and what its specialty is, who its clients are, how it came to be.
Yeah, sure thing. So my company, Versus Audio, were founded in 2020 in the height of the pandemic. Very similar to how Phillip started, doing your thing. Once I moved from Tallahassee to Atlanta, I got real active into the production side of film. So I was on set capturing audio, also as well as post mixing the audios in the films that I've recorded. Done that for 2 years, and then you develop a clientele, and then I eventually incorporated my company, and then we built and scaled from that point, and the rest is history. Some of the services that we provide are, like I said, location audio recording, post-production audio mixing and mastering, as well as custom music creation. And that's pretty much the gist of it.
And Demetrius, one of the things that tipped the scale for Demetrius is that he focused on audio as an undergraduate, and then went and got a master's degree in film. So he understands not only the front end where you folks are going to be, but ultimately what has to go up on the screen, and something about what makes the difference between a successful project and a less successful one. And I think that filmmaking experience is going to be a great benefit to you as students. I want to ask you same question I asked Phillip, and that is, what about your background, both educational and professional, do you think outfits you uniquely well for this? Demetrius is our, he basically has a two-level job. One is as a technical resource specialist, which essentially means that he's our chief technical officer. And so when things break, Demetrius is going to find a way to fix them. But also he's our course leader for music production technology. And you're going to have courses of one sort or another, basically all through the program in this. And that is not simply about the gear, the software, and about how to get over the learning curves. It's also about how to pull it all together and utilize it to be a more effective producer of your own music. Hans Zimmer is as much a producer as a composer. And so tell us a little bit, Demetrius, about how you feel your experience has prepared you for this job.
Okay. I'll talk about the education portion first, and then I'll talk about the technology side. So back when I was in undergrad, I focused heavily, I was a music major, but I focused heavily in audio engineering. I was just profoundly interested in it. My favorite composer, and still is to this day, it was Quincy Jones. So amazing producer, amazing composer. So I kind of idolized that, and like kind of focus intently on DAW usage, on, okay, how do you record? How do you properly record, learn these audio techniques, the recording techniques? What are some things that we can push the limit with DAWs? What are some I really just pushed the limit while I was in school. So with that kind of curiosity, I got a job with Guitar Center teaching Logic after a year of learning the software. And that kind of just pushed me more to learn more about the other DAWs. Like we have Reason, we have Ableton, we have so many different audio recording workstations. So I've done that for about 3 years. And then I went on to learn Nuendo actually in grad school. So that's the other side of Cubase. And then once grad school came around, I got more technical, learning the film side of things. So I started working with motion picture engineers on set and things like that. So I started to learn how systems work, not just audio systems, but video system projections, just how things are routed, electricity and things like that. So I just got real curious of how things work and were routed. And then eventually that just led on set jobs to where I'm doing playback for large productions with large artists like Drake, Future, Wu-Tang Clan, all these big names. But I'm working in the tech side of things, all simply from learning how a DAW works.
Yeah. And anybody who's a pro in this business will tell you that understanding signal path is sort of the key thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're down on your hands and knees, under a console trying to figure out, why that mic signal is not getting to the console, or working in a DAW. And that's another thing that I think uniquely suits Demetrius for this job. He is going to be invaluable to us, no question about it. Now, the last question, basically, same as I asked Philip, has to do with outcomes. The four of us talked a little earlier today about the fact that the analogy we're using with students is that we're preparing them for combat. And if you're a pacifist and combat doesn't excite you, then think of it as an Olympic competition. And it truly is, just in the same way that only the very best high jumpers and broad jumpers and runners make it to the Olympics. This is a brutally competitive industry. It's great when you get there, but it's a struggle to get there sometimes. And we won't talk about the details of that today, but I do, if you can, Demetrius, just talk a little bit about how you're going to outfit these folks and what the essential things you want them to come away from your coursework with are.
Okay, so I teach Music Production Lab 1 and 2. Music Production Lab 1 is we're working out of Logic. So that's the main DAW that we're working out of, teaching basically how to use the DAW. You can get familiar with how a DAW is set up, because all DAWs really are the same. You're going to have a transport, you have export options, you have inspector windows, you have your main windows. All DAWs are created equal. Well, so we're just basically breaking down the structure of a DAW and just getting familiar with Logic. That's literally what Music Production Lab 504 is about. But once we get into Music Production Lab 2, 514, we're breaking down how to, okay, now we're creating a mock-up. Now we're getting real specific with the things that you're learning in orchestration and hybrid orchestration. Those things that you are learning, those concepts, the philosophies, we're bringing that into the DAW structure. The scores that you're creating, you can literally import your scores into Logic, and then you can create your mock-up, see what works, what doesn't work. You can see your instrument ranges. Is this in proper range of that instrument? If not, what can we do to offset it? So we're really getting technical. I call it I call it a lab, because it really truly is a lab. Everything that you're learning in theory, you're bringing here into the DAW, which is your practical lab.
Absolutely. And for those of you out there who have not used a pro grade DAW like Logic or Cubase or Pro Tools, occasionally is used by composers. It used to be Digital Performer. There are still a few of those holdouts out there as well. But for those of you who think, wow, this is going to be a steep learning curve, I think we're going to try and make this less steep for you. The DAW is basically just a recording studio in a box. And if you picture it that way, with the musicians out on the floor, the producer, the engineer in the booth, and all those cables running through the snake, connecting one to the other, you're basically looking at the way these workstations were designed. And it will hopefully be a little bit more intuitive. So when they come out of this, basically, I know that everybody out there is dying to ask the question you're never allowed to ask in these seminars, these workshops, and that is, the how do I get a gig presentation. And we're going to give you the answer that you're probably going to hear from a lot of people is we can't tell you exactly how to get a gig, because there are so many people skills and business skills and relationship and networking skills involved in that. What we can tell you is that we can put into your backpack what you're going to need to follow any number of paths into the industry. And what Demetrius is teaching, and we're teaching it not as just another tech course like a YouTube tutorial, but as a production course. We want you to be successful producers. Thanks, Demetrius. I'm going to turn now to Mr. Wright. And Seth, who is now also on our Atlanta campus, although he's a native of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He is going to be our man on the scene for game scoring and music design. And I'm going to ask him to tell you a little bit about music design in a minute here. But a program like this, a program that wants to be a world-class screen scoring program, simply has to devote a good share of its time to not just to games, but to all new media, interactive media that's out there, because increasingly that's where the work is. And composers who might have come into a class like this 20 years ago and said, I want to be John Williams or Danny Elfman or Hans Zimmer, will now look more towards people like Austin Wintory as their exemplars. And Seth is somebody I've worked with for a number of years, and he was my first choice and really my only choice to do this. He also runs his own company, Wright Music Interactive. And why don't we start with that, Seth, and tell us a little bit about what Wright Music Interactive is in business to do, and who hires you and why.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Andy. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who have joined us and given us a chance to discover together if this is the fit for you. I encourage you to ask the honest questions, the ones that you're thinking. Give us a shot at the hard stuff you're thinking about. So Wright Music Interactive for me is an extension of my previous arrangement, which was as a technical music design director at Meta, working within Oculus Studios. While at Meta, I had a chance to work on really cool VR projects, including Iron Man VR and Batman Arkham Shadow, which went on to win VR Game of the Year. And after that, I had become increasingly passionate about this new domain of technical music design, this idea that the intersection of technical skill and implementation, production, and composition was the future of what it meant to score for games. And I was feeling frustrated that, in my arrangement at Meta, I wasn't having the opportunity to either advocate for that as heartily as I wanted to, and also because of the nature of the arrangement, I was having to say no a lot. So I decided the time was right to step away and to start Wright Music Interactive. And I'm proud to say that since then, we've partnered with, composers all over the world and studios all over the world to fill either one or 2/3 of that triangle of that production, composition, or music implementation, or sometimes, provide the whole triangle itself. We're honored right now to be the music design provider for Activision Blizzard, most recently working on Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred, and have all sorts of other exciting collaborations that we're working on right here while I'm working with you to help you be the best technical music designers that you can possibly be.
And Seth's reputation in this sector, so for some of you, this term of art, music design, may seem relatively new. We're invested in it. We believe that it is a big part of the future for all of you. So much so that we named the program in part after it. And music design can be taken to cover a lot of things, but in Seth's particular case, you described this eloquently to me one time, and I'm not going to try to do this, you're going to do it for me. Taking the linear assets provided by the composer and...
Technical music design is the understanding that fundamentally the product in video games is not a linear product. Whenever you score for a soundtrack album and you go to iTunes and you can click and play through, this is not the medium. This is an arrangement of the medium. The actual art itself is the art that you experience in the game, which is fundamentally nonlinear. Even if you create a track with a beginning and a middle and an end, when that track, if it's a simple loop, which is largely an outdated concept, but if it is a simple loop, it's still functioning in a nonlinear environment. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that you understand and have the skills that you need to either be the person handling the nonlinearity of your own art, or at least have the language and the skills to advocate for your music as it is taken from a linear medium and put into that nonlinear video game. Because the evidence is overwhelmingly saying that you will, as a composer, as a professional composer, work in games. I want to give you the tools to advocate for your music when you get there.
And that in part answers the third question, which is what you want your students to come away with. You've spoken very passionately to me about that. And again, in terms of outfitting them for the world that's out there, the highly competitive world that's out there, you would consider this to be, along with things like orchestration and production and compositional skills, one of the essentials, right?
I
for
absolutely
survival in
would,
this business.
Andy. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's why you're here, my friend. And I think, you know, these three folks, along with, you know, supplemented by visiting lecturers and guest composers and so forth, are going to, I hope, I believe, I have absolute faith in the fact that they're going to outfit you for that battlefield or Olympic training ground, as well as anybody in the business. And we're now going to go to your questions. So, Shireen, are you going to pop back on the screen and just introduce this section?
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andy and faculty. That was a lot of great information. We did have some questions come up from our audience. As a reminder, please feel free to submit your questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them during this portion of the webinar. So let's go to our first question. Our first question is, how much of the course content will be focused on engineering and mixing?
Yes, I can pop in for that.
Okay, thank you.
That was me just letting my wife know that her French lessons were coming through my microphone. Okay, Demetrius, go ahead, grab this one.
Yep, sure thing. So like we mentioned before, I'll be teaching the first two courses in the music production lab. So those two courses, Music Production Lab will be in the first quarter, and then Music Production Lab 2 will be in the second quarter. So those are the two semesters, so to speak, that will be focused on music mixing techniques and things of that nature. So we'll learn about the different DSPs of compressions, reverbs, things of that nature, and just very simple ways of using them. We won't go in a very detailed sketch ways of doing that. But when you do go the soundtrack route, when you guys do get to that point, you'll get to have the opportunity to work in Pro Tools just to send your mixes through. So that way you can see how a more detailed mix will be done. So you never have to go as an engineer level when it comes to mixing, but it is great to know, and we will teach you the skills to do that.
Great.
Yeah, it's important to note that these days, unlike as few as 20, 25 years ago, where a composer would come onto the scoring stage, conduct his music, which was oftentimes recorded directly to tape or 35 millimeter mag film or something like that, and leave the rest of it basically to the technicians, to the engineer, to the mixing engineer, the mastering engineer, etc. These days, as I think you probably all know, you have to be prepared to do it all, especially at the beginning of your career. And that's why we've designed these as courses in music production, not simply in music technology. Who's next, Shireen?
All right, so the next question is, what game authoring program will the students be using?
Yeah, I can take that one. So a core principle of my music design instruction is that the creative leads the technical. First and foremost, what I want to equip you with is the skills to master emerging technology, because those are the two things that you must do to be successful. You must be a master of your craft, and you must be able to master emerging technologies as they change across your career. Now, I appreciate that question because it draws out a real reality. Right now, the video game industry surveys published by by Brian Schmidt and then the Game SoundCon community tells us that the overwhelming amount of AAA and mass budget projects are using Audio Kinetics Wise. So our video game curriculum is extremely Wise forward. There's one assignment at the very beginning where you will present to me a loop, and then after that, I never hear anything from you that is not nonlinear and Wise. And that is because that is the medium. We are fairly game engine agnostic here. Unity and Unreal are those things that you will need to learn and you will need to master on your own. But what I want you to know is the ability to articulate the principles of nonlinearity. And we do that primarily in Wise.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can students use Sibelius, or do they have to work exclusively with Dorico?
So I'm going to start off here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Philip. Do you want to? I'll just give them the short answer, and then you can elaborate upon this.
Yeah, you got it.
If we did not insist on a common platform for notation, even though, by the way, Dorico was designed by a group of Sibelius engineers who left the company to form Dorico, to create Dorico with Steinberg. If we didn't do that, we would risk ending up with an end product on the scoring stage that was not consistent, did not necessarily conform to our program specs. And Philip also is going to make this much easier for you because he's developed a number of templates designed to work with Dorico that you'll be writing into, you'll be scoring into when we're preparing for these live sessions. But Philip, I want to hear your take on this, because I think it's not the first time, it's not the last time we're going to hear this question.
Yeah.
Particularly since composers tend to settle in on a particular piece of software or platform, and then they want to live with it forever. And change is always difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of like the one that you start with is the one that you stay with until you find a reason otherwise. So I started off with Finale back in 2006, and it was all I knew for many years. Then I went to Sibelius when I did my graduate degree in scoring and fell in love with it because I felt like it was a lot easier to use. Dorico, I really didn't dive into Dorico until 2020, just because I was so happy with Sibelius. But I've suddenly found a lot of spare time on my hands in 2020. And so I was like, I'm going to learn this new software, Dorico, and I will never, ever, ever go back. Now, it's not an industry standard. It's not the industry standard because orchestrators can kind of use whatever software gets the job done for them and whatever produces the highest quality output for them. And so it really depends on what they've been trained on. At this school, we're going to be Dorico. We're going to teach Dorico and use Dorico. And this is personal for me, but I feel that it is the best designed software for media scoring, specifically for media scoring sessions. And so that's what I use professionally. That's what I teach. The templates that I've created have been utilized by some of the biggest Disney productions over the past few years. And so they work. And what I've done with the templates that I'm going to be walking through with you guys is giving you something that you can pretty much put your music into it, print it off, and it's ready for a scoring stage in Los Angeles. So yeah, we'll use Dorico for the program. And I'm hoping that you'll see the benefit of that.
Great, thank you. Our next
Yeah,
question.
I believe they will. And I was just going to say, add, Shireen, that I know that it's these decisions about what the program standard should be, Logic or Cubase or Reaper or Digital Performer or what have you, they're controversial sometimes because people do come in with their favorites and they come in having mastered the learning curve on those and reluctant to do it with another. But I think that Philip is right, that once you get over that learning curve, you'll be sold. And if you want to get a little bit more persuasion, there's a series of YouTube videos that Alan Silvestri did for Steinberg about his use of Dorico, oftentimes in tandem with Cubase, in doing his film scores. It is a more picture-friendly notation platform than the others that are out there. You'll have to see that for yourself to be a believer, but Philip is right that for media scoring, there really doesn't seem to be any competition out there. Okay, Shireen, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you talk about what game authoring program will students be using?
Yeah, I think we may have already hit on that question, Shrin. The answer was audio kinetics wise. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
There are some other video game related questions I'm excited to hit on, but I want to get there when you're ready.
Okay, sounds good. Andy, we've had quite a few questions around international students who are interested in obtaining an F1 visa. Can students start this program on an F1 visa right now?
Well, that is certainly our hope. Right now, at this very minute, the answer is no. And some of this has to do with roadblocks that the Department of Education under the Trump administration has imposed on us. We basically have to kind of reinvent the wheel to receive the authorization through what's called the SEVP program to issue I-20s and accept foreign students. Our legal team is working very hard on this at this very minute. I've not let them off the hook since the spring and basically said this was designed as an international program, not as something limited to residents of the US. Please make that happen for us. And there's only so quickly you can get the federal government to move if they don't want to move. But I would say I would still gamble on the fact that we're going to get over this hurdle in time for some students to obtain their visas in time to start at the October 5th start date. There's a lot of variation among countries in terms of the time frame for visa processing. It tends to be easier in Western European countries than it does in the rest of the world. But the only answer I can give you at this point is that it's an issue that I never drop. And even if we have to kick off this first cohort without the benefit of having international students in our classroom, I promise you that as soon as possible after that, we're going to solve this program, because there's no doubt that that's where the reputation of this program lies, in being able to host international students.
Great, thank you. This next question, I think is for you also, Andy. Can you talk about opportunities for students to have interactions with filmmakers and video game developers?
Yeah, this is a big absence, lack in many programs, basically, is the student ability to interact with young filmmakers. And I'm speaking of people who are basically at your career stage. So they're where you are, or maybe just a little bit beyond it. They have produced an independent short film. They may even have produced an independent feature or an indie game. Those are the people we want you to work with. Obviously, even though we might bring an A-list filmmaker into the classroom, either virtually or on the ground, we don't, of course, expect those people to hire you. But one of the reasons that we're working, we're making inroads and working with local companies like Tyler Perry Productions and Trilith and other local production companies, as well as with the Atlanta-based film festivals that host young indie filmmakers from this region, is that we want, in terms of your final projects, basically, we want you to be in the room with a filmmaker, spotting the film, delivering it to professional specs, and we want that in some ways to be your first client. The hope is, of course, that they would remain a client of yours throughout your career, because we all know that the composers who have name recognition all have that name recognition in part because of their association with filmmakers. And my feeling is that if we can begin that association while you're in school, then you can carry it with you when you leave the program. So you will be hearing from pros, but you'll be having encounters, creative collaborations with people who are a little bit closer to where you are, in hopes that you continue to collaborate with them as your career moves on.
Okay, great. To piggyback from that, Andy, you mentioned that you would be teaching classes. Can you talk about the courses that you will be teaching and you'll be part of the lectures and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been teaching everything. At Columbia College, there probably wasn't a course that I didn't teach, and the same thing held true largely at Berkeley and the Film Scoring Academy. And when I took this job, I said, I don't want to do that because I'm not the best person. I want to work in my area of specialty, which is basically analysis. So if any of you have seen or heard of or read my book, Scoring the Screen, The Secret Language of Music for Film and Visual Media, you know that what I have a passion for basically is going in and deconstructing scores to find out what they're made of, what makes them tick, what makes them work. If a particular scene or a particular bar of a particular cue gives the audience goose pimples or terrifies them or brings a tear to their eye, I want to know why so that I can pass that information on to my students. That has always been my main interest. I've been a film music lover since I was 7 years old. And that's always been the first question I asked is, what is making this work? What is making this have the effect on me that it does? So I'll be teaching the courses that are cinematic score analysis is what the title is basically. And there are going to be 2 stages of that in the program. And the other thing that I'm going to do, and I'm very proud that MDS at Strayer has allowed me to add this to the curriculum. You've probably seen on the curriculum 3 stages of courses called Find Your Voice. And these are one-on-one tutorials. It's a little bit like private instruction. And I said for a colleague this morning, I said, there is never going to be an MDS sound, a cookie cutter sound. Oh, we recognize that composer. He must have studied in Andy's program at MDS. No, I think that the MDS sound will be the sound of 20 individual voices, 20 individual and very distinctive voices, because that is what the industry demands. The top filmmakers these days are quirkier than they ever were. They're not factory filmmakers the way they might have been back in the 50s or 60s. They are artists, and they want to work with other artists. This, by the way, is why I think this profession is relatively safe from AI, in terms of AI actually usurping your position or taking your job or writing your music for you. Because I don't think those filmmakers are ever going to want to work that way. They're going to want to work with you. And that's what the Find Your Voice tutorials are all about, is is discovering, we're sort of prospecting, we're digging for what is unique about your voice. And then we're going to develop and refine it to the point where it results in a professional reel that you can take out to the world and say, this is me.
Okay, thank you. The second part of the question is, can you talk about some of the guest composers and industry professionals that will be visiting and giving lectures? Any names you can share?
Yeah, some of these you may already have seen if you visited the website. So again, when I was asked to do this, I did not want to do it alone. I wanted our coursework developed by people who knew their respective turfs really, really well. And the first person I contacted was Hollywood's most esteemed orchestrator, Conrad Pope. Then I went out to Seth, because I wanted that aspect of our program to be as strong as it could be. I went to Catherine Joy, who some of you may have heard of the Joy Music House, which is a sort of full-service, one-stop shop production service for media composers, now with offices in LA, New York, and London. Some of you might well end up working for Joy Music House. Then I went to Jay Weigel, who is the regional director of the Society of Composers and Lyricists in Nashville, and also a composer with a long track record with Tyler Perry Productions and others. He's Louisiana-based, but he's got outposts in Nashville and LA, and he's an absolute pro. And the Emer Noon was then added to the roster. Now, Emer, some of you who are into game music may well know of her work. She is sort of I would say that she's kind of like the diva of game score conductors. Very often when you see a live concert held, whether in the United States or internationally, featuring game music, she's on the podium, and she is wildly passionate about game music. And she, in connection with her husband, Craig Garfinkel, is a game composer herself. So she was part of our roster. Now, all of these people are going to be in your classroom, along with another composer, Eddie Lan, L-A-N, Eduardo Lan, who's a Mexican composer, and I think just stone brilliant. All of these people basically will have teaching slots throughout the program. So you'll have pros in the classroom with you throughout. Now, as far as the really big guys, I'll just sum it up this way. When you've been in this business as long as I have, and you've been able to do positive, productive things for your colleagues and your peers in the industry, you make a lot of friends, and a lot of these people remain your friends for life. So among those who've done guest lectures and master classes for me in the past, John Powell, James Newton Howard, Danny Elfman, Michael Dana, Daniel Hart. Let's see, recently we had
Howard
Danny
Shore.
Bensi and Saunder Urians, Howard Shore, of course. We're going to see some of these people come back for this program. One of the things that we've done fairly aggressively, I guess would be the word, is outreach to these folks. And among you is going to be a student who co-hosted our last webinar, Carson Zuck, who was nominated for the scholarship by Harry Gregson Williams. And Harry, who is an absolutely lovely guy, I'm hoping that we can actually bring him out in the flesh. A lot of these folks are just too busy, too inundated with work to jump on a plane and come to Atlanta on short notice, but I'm going to do my best to get as many of them here as I possibly can. When you meet with these people, when you shake their hand, when you hear them talk, when you're close enough to hear them breathe, all of a sudden the walls drop and you feel like, wow, I'm not really that far from my dreams after all. I just had a personal conversation with Harry Gregson Williams. And it's amazing the effect that it has on young composers to know that they're only 1 degree of separation away from where they ultimately want to go.
Thank you, Andy. So we have 5 minutes left. I have one last question for the faculty, but before that, can you please talk about the upcoming deadline, the August 21st deadline, please?
Yeah. Deadline is a word that, carries a lot of weight. It's not a deadline in terms of being an absolute cutoff for admission to the program. But this cohort of students is unique in that they're being provided with full tuition scholarships. And these scholarships cover everything that happens in the classroom, everything that happens with its faculty, and everything that happens on a recording stage. The only thing they don't cover are your personal expenses of travel and meals and lodging in the various locations we go to. So the fact that we're issuing scholarships to this entire class means that we have to be a little bit more careful about the timeline leading to the October 5th start. So that we've already had one deadline where we basically said the first group of scholarships will be issued by this deadline, and then they'll be gone. The second set deadline is basically to notify you that we only have 20 of them. And if you want one of them, you'd be best advised, if you're serious about this program, to get your application and all the accompanying materials in by that date, because we can't promise that beyond that date, there will be any scholarships left. So that's really the meaning of that deadline. It's basically to say, guys, if you're serious about this, make a decision. If you've applied to other schools and you're waiting for notification from those schools, that's fine. But if you want a shot at one of these scholarships, we advise you to try and get your materials in by that date.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so I have my last question, and this is for the faculty. And Demetrius, let's start with you. If you could answer this question in maybe 45 seconds, because we're running out of time, as a faculty member, what made you decide to teach at this school in this program and work with Andy?
To learn, simply that. To have the opportunity to learn from those who've been here before, and I've always been a film score buff. That's actually why I went to grad school for film. I worked on a I can't remember, it was a web series, and I got to compose the intro and the outro themes, and I was gung-ho, I'm going to film school, and I was tricked, and I found out it was for production, but it was the greatest thing ever. But that's what made me apply.
Great, thank you. Phillip, what made you consider this school program and to work with Andy?
So I'm really passionate about helping the next generation of composers, orchestrators, and film music developers learn the skills that they need to get into the industry. I know when I was getting into the industry, there were so many unknowns that I kind of had to figure out for myself. And now that I've done the time and figured those things out, I'm really, really passionate about imparting that to the next generation to kind of give them a jump start. And when Andy Hill calls you up and asks you to do something, you really can't say no. So here I am. Glad to be here.
Great answer. And last but not least, Seth.
Phillip stole some of my thunder. Andy Hill is a titan. If you are not aware of his decades of pedigree, you could not possibly be placing yourself in better hands than Andy's. Secondarily, I believe firmly that video game music is the art music of our time, that the music we look back on in 100 years to study as exemplary of our time will be nonlinear music written for video games. As an extension of that belief, I acknowledge that I have a responsibility as someone at the forefront of this industry working in video games to help make sure that you, the brilliant composers stepping out into the world, have a foundation in nonlinearity so that your music can not only push the bar creatively and technically separately, but as a holistic unit can raise the bar for what this art form can be, because I love it. It's given a lot to me, and I know it can for you as well.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Let's have everybody turn their cameras on and unmute just so that we can say a collective goodbye. Good luck and Godspeed to all of you.
Goodbye.
I hope that we're going to see some of you in our classroom.
Yeah,
And thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Farewell.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That concludes our question and answer portion. Thank you for joining us today and taking the time to meet our amazing faculty. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you again for being with us today. Back to you, Bailey.
Thank you so much. This does conclude the session. You may now disconnect.